If you're someone who watches a racist content contributor who gets banned, you follow them to Rumble. And what's the reason for that? Is it because he did debates, or is it because he got banned from a bunch of platforms? That is exactly why.
It's because he's engaged in a sexual trafficking trial. It just so happens to be. It's not even coincidence. It's just like, if you are gonna like do research, talk to people who disagree with you, think about why you might be wrong, you're gonna more likely come to correct conclusions. We're gonna debate about censorship. I am against censorship, and Miles is for censorship. Or I guess we should say, for the sake of the debate.
No, fuck it. Let's.
But I mean, like, generally, like, we're gonna like debate. It's like not everything is gonna be necessarily our stance. That's the whole point of it, you know.
So you mind if I start?
Yeah, go ahead. Give me your your pro censorship take.
Okay, so we're both social democrats, right? We believe in the state having certain powers to provide goods and to make sure their people are okay.
I say we agree with social democracy right now. That's what it is.
Yeah. And so in certain instances that involves encroaching on people's rights, right? Whether it's taxing someone, which is depriving them of their how they get to spend their money so that we can provide social programs, or maybe restricting certain guns from people owning them, you know, in order to increase social harmony. We're okay with the state removing rights to increase overall well-being, right? Mm-hmm. So my argument is basically, if there is a certain narrative or a set of words that are causing more harm to people than they're providing good, how is that a different issue than any other issue where we'd say the government should be able to step in and restrict rights to provide for the good?
I think it's a little different here just because, legally speaking, or just different countries have different laws in relation to speech and in relation to like guns. So this is more so like a broad stance on it, is that when it comes to, like, if we're talking from America's perspective of free speech, then it's encroaching on their right in the sense that, you know, you have the right to free speech, but these platforms have the right to censor you. So what I would disagree with is, I don't think that they should have the right to censor you.
You don't think platforms should have the right to censor?
Well, because that's what the whole argument is. Like, people are being censored, but like it's all legal within like.
But why would you oppose platforms being allowed to censor?
Well, I would oppose platforms being able to censor people because I think that right now we're seeing the detriment of what censorship does to people when we're seeing the most far extremism we've seen ever, probably. Like, I mean, we just had a president of the United States who's been indicted multiple times, who has like a mugshot public, who has been notorious for lying. Like, there's claims about him like collaborating with Putin.
What does that have to do with censorship?
Well, no, I'm saying like we have people. This is a more like talking about the extremism. You know, we are seeing a lot of extremism. And censorship has allowed for these extremists to go unfiltered on their own platforms like Rumble or like Twitter. Well, Twitter not so much. But like we had the censorship. We cut them off from mainstream media. We cut them off from social media. And then new platforms are being able to be made like Rumble and Cozy TV, where they can engage in these extremist takes without any pushback.
I would say the government should be able to shut down those platforms as well.
Why?
Because if they're... Are you a utilitarian, would you say?
I don't know. Not really.
I would say I am. You know, I think what's right is what provides more utility for society.
But how do you determine what's right?
Well, that's my method for doing it. Right.
Okay.
I think that whatever is good, net well-being
is what's right.
Okay. Well, what I was saying is, I'm a utilitarian. So like, if you have a figure out there, like who's been censored, who's major, and had to go to a different platform, like Andrew Tate, that's a good example, right? I would consider Andrew Tate someone who contributes far more harm than well-being to society, right? So I think the government has an interest in allowing platforms to ban him, and maybe even themselves going into, different corners of social media and the internet to shut down sites like Rumble if we determine that much more harm is being done than well-being. So if you're saying that we haven't censored well enough and they're creating other sites, I would just say we can do a better job at it then. We can be more effective.
Even more censorship. So what happens when like a future site gets made? You're saying just every time an extremist site gets made, then it's the job of the government to shut down.
I mean, we already have an apparatus.
But doesn't that kind of feel like that? Doesn't feel like much like a social democracy. It feels more like
the government. Like social democracies already do this, right? With certain, for example, like child pornography sites,
sure,
right, or terrorist sites. The government is able to unilaterally shut these off. Mm-hmm. I'm saying if there's certain like far right extremist sites that are leading
But I
to
think
terror
those
attacks.
are like,
Why can't we
I think
apply
those
the
are
same
like a
logic
few
to that?
orders of magnitude worse than like someone who's saying like someone who's giving like an opinion that's a little extreme. Like I think it's understandable that like we're removing sites that involve like child pornography, and that we're like trying to shut down like terrorist organizations from using social media. Like that's understandable. But someone like having an opinion doesn't feel like it's like you kind of like if that doesn't feel like from a utilitarian perspective like that is like doing that much good, because it starts to like you have to like find the line like between like what's good and then like what's essentially like you're running like a closer authoritarian regime, you know.
And there's certainly a
That doesn't feel
line.
good to
There's
me.
certainly a line somewhere. Like if someone has just like a slightly, you know,
But if you're
bad
saying there's a
take,
line,
I'm not saying we should ban
but if you're
them.
saying there's a line, but also every time one of these platforms come up, we should get rid of them. That doesn't feel like there's a line. It feels like just whenever it's.
Well, it depends on the
incidental.
content of the platform, right?
And how do you determine the content of the platform? Like just like how people perceive it.
Well, I think that it's all kind of like a case by case thing, right? Like Donald Trump got banned.
But
from
doesn't that
social
make that
media.
like super complicated and like super unrealistic?
Sure. I mean, do you believe in censorship? Do you think that child pornography and terror sites should be shut down?
Yes.
Then you have a line somewhere as well,
Yeah.
right? How do you determine that? Isn't that complicated?
Well, yeah, but none of those lines. This isn't like super.
You agree with
this-
censorship
yeah.
as well to some extent. I just have a
Yeah,
different
but-
line than you.
Yeah, but the difference is when I agree with like the banning of like child pornography sites.
We're definitely gonna have to bleep that by the way every time.
Oh really? Yeah. Oh yeah, that's some words that you're not cool at saying. It's like when you ban child pornography, like there's like explicit harm in like the act of like people engaging and watching and like purchasing child pornography. There's like, I mean, we have seen like harm in the extremism, but like the issue is like if we right now think that like what is going on in Rumble is extreme, and we see our government or like whatever acting government at the time like censors them or removes those platforms, then would you then agree that like whichever party like position or people are in power can like then choose like what if they wanted to remove like certain like Instagram accounts that were like super far that were like far left, or just like social democrat accounts like closer to that those ideologies, like would you be okay with that then?
So what you're saying is basically once you open the door,
Then it's
for
just whoever's
censoring.
empowered is allowed to censor what they don't agree with.
I understand that argument. What I'm saying is the door is already open, right? We already banned stuff. I just want to move that line a little further away. Like you're a big
Well-
Destiny fan, right? You familiar with the phrase
Sure, but I think,
stochastic
but
terrorism?
no, but I think the issue
You're not?
is, well, no, I don't know about that.
Okay.
But I'm saying I
Go
think the government isn't banning any forms of speech. You know, like the platforms themselves are banning the speech. That's different. Like the government banning like child porn is like a federal mandate. You know,
Mhm.
what these companies are doing has nothing to do with what the government does. So that's the difference.
Yes, but I'm sure there's also content that you would be okay with certain companies banning,
Yeah.
right?
I would be, but we're talking about like when we were saying like people encroach on people's rights.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech is a right. You don't have the right to watch child porn, essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, they're infringements to your rights.
Yeah,
you
so-
know? And I would argue that certain things like spreading racist, hyperbolic rhetoric and implying that people should go out and commit terror attacks, you know, like certain like Nick Fuentes or people who've been
Well, yeah,
deplatformed are.
obviously,
I would consider
yeah.
that past the line.
I agree that calls to action and
Yeah.
implied calls to action should be censored.
But you would say, okay, so where do we disagree here?
Well, I think that like, and I don't think Andrew Tate at any point had any call to action for like any kind of violence.
Do you think he's creating a better or worse world?
He's probably creating like net worse, but like that sounds like we're assuming a lot of things when we hear like worse world.
Mm-hmm.
But he's probably like it's probably people are worse off, but maybe people aren't worse off. Maybe there are people that watch Andrew Tate purely because they think he's like this comedic figure, and they don't actually take any of like the more extremist point of views that he has.
But does that matter to you whether it's a good or bad outcome of their content? Or are you just against censoring as a principle, whether it has good or bad results?
It probably okay. Like I don't have like a full. I don't. Yeah. It probably it does sometimes matter, and I don't mind being inconsistent on when I think this matters more than another thing, but I don't think Andrew Tate has reached the point of it mattering enough that he should be like wiped off the platforms. Because I think he does say a lot of dumb stuff, and I think that a lot of his messages can be harmful. But I think that like examples of like when Hasan debated Andrew Tate on like a platform and made him look really stupid, like that was probably more effective at making him look dumb and like removing fire from his base than like now he's able to just be on Rumble alone and just keep spewing like certain extreme takes.
So
some things are like funny, some things are just like a character.
I'll kind of flip this on you then, because you're saying my thing is very authoritarian, right?
Mm-hmm. Could be. It's virgin.
Andrew Tate was someone who's banned by private platforms.
Mm-hmm.
How is it not authoritarian for you to say the government should go in and tell a private company that they have to let someone use their service to spread hate?
Well, it's not authoritarian in the sense that the government's already established this is our constitution. These are the rights that we have given our people. Freedom of speech is one of them. We want you.
Sure, but if you go into a Walmart and you start screaming the N-word,
yeah,
the Walmart has a right to throw you out because they're a private company, and
yeah, but
you have a right to free speech in public, but you don't have a right to go into someone's private business and then say whatever you want there.
Sure.
That person can.
Okay, so then I'll say I don't think I'll take that back. I don't think the government has the right to tell a private institution what to do, but I do think that it's not morally. I do think that it's still wrong for private institutions or public institutions to be able to ban speech, because I think like regardless of whatever the whatever America says on free speech or on speech, whatever Canada says about speech, I still think broadly like an effective democracy allows for opinions and thoughts to be discussed and then flesh out the best ones. And I don't think that's happening right now. I think on Rumble you get really far right extremism, and then you also get really far left extremism on a lot of other platforms, like more mainstream ones now. And those extreme takes are becoming more mainstream because you don't have people that will fight back against them. Mm-hmm. So it's like these two extremism sides are now becoming like more mainstream because there isn't like that infight. I'm not infighting, but there isn't like the fighting of the ideas.
Do you think that we have a responsibility to protect our democracy existing in the future?
Yeah.
Even if that means restricting certain rights in the present?
Yes.
Like Hitler, right?
Yeah.
Like he won democratically.
Mm-hmm.
But would you have said, this guy's probably going to be the end of democracy, so we shouldn't allow him to use our democratic institutions against themselves? It's like the tolerance of intolerance type thing.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
Like there's a rising social movement.
Are you saying that like do you think that the act of censoring like Andrew Tate is preserving our democracy?
To some extent, yeah, and Donald Trump more thoroughly, I'd say.
In what way?
Because I think that when you have figures out there who are, and I'm applying this more to Trump now,
sure,
but who are advocating for the.
But where does he engage now? He engages on Truth Social, his social media platform. If he was engaging on Twitter, maybe he would engage with people who are fighting back against him.
But that's not how he worked on Twitter, right?
Yeah, no, I know, but people were still fighting back against him, and obviously. I know, I was cutting you off.
What I'm saying is, if you have a figure out there who is trying to disable the institutions that allow us to have things like freedom of speech, and they're using freedom of speech to do that, it might be necessary to restrict their freedom of speech in order to maintain freedom of speech for the future for everyone.
Sure, but you could probably argue what he did, like in relation to January 6th, was a call to action, like a very clear call to action. Like
so is that your line?
Explicit. Yeah, like if you're telling. Well, because I think there's a difference between like having really crazy takes and talking about them, and then having really crazy takes and telling people to act on those crazy thoughts.
And do you think it's morally wrong for a private company to ban someone who has crazy takes but doesn't give a call to action?
Morally wrong? I don't know if it's morally wrong, but I disagree with it.
You disagree with it?
Yeah.
So if you were running Twitter, you'd let people say whatever they wanted up to the point that they called for violence directly?
It would probably take a lot more thinking on what I would want exactly if I was running a company. But I'd be against call to actions. If there were accounts that were like straight up just like saying slurs for no reason, like straight up just like N-word, like F slur, I wouldn't ban those accounts. But I was gonna make an argument for like you could ghost ban them, but that would kind of be pretty much the same thing.
So you wouldn't? You're consistent?
Yeah, I think so.
So are you not? Because I'm somewhat concerned with like the way that you get to a place where
like I think if there's evidence that like someone who's engaging in who's engaging in free speech and is talking about issues and isn't doing any call to actions, but then it's proven that like their bases are actually engaging in a lot of hate, then I'd be okay with that. I'd say like you might not have directly wanted that, but you have implicitly been engaging in calls to action.
And you'd be okay with the private company banning them
At that point, yeah.
So why can't I apply that to Donald Trump or Andrew Tate?
Well,
we have January 6th. We have these mass shootings.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that in the case of Trump.
Yeah.
Right? That I was arguing earlier.
So that's a legitimate ban.
Yeah, I do think that's a legitimate ban.
All right, but not Tate.
No, because what has been happening with like what calls to action has Tate been engaging in?
Maybe I don't know his content well enough. Trump, though, I feel like we agree there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially like. Yeah. This is the issue. Like, there is a lot of nuances and it's harder to find lines. But, like, when you're the president of the United States, like, essentially, like, calling for a coup that's just pretty insane. Like, that just shouldn't be happening. Like, Andrew Tate saying, like, what, women can't drive? And saying, like, whatever crazy shit he says. I don't think those are on the same level. So I won't give as much of a... I won't care as much about like whether or not he's censored than
who is that kid who killed a bunch of people like 8 years ago? It was in like Elliot Rogers. Mm-hmm. You're familiar with that? It was like this.
I wasn't in politics 8 years ago.
It was like an incel mass shooter kid who was like really big into like Stefan Molyneux and like a bunch of other like big right wing commentator people at the time.
I didn't know enough back then.
Fair enough, but like. I would not be shocked, and I'd be surprised if you'd say that this would shock you if there was a mass shooting by an Andrew Tate fan in the next couple of years. Would that shock you?
It would shock me.
Really?
Well, who's he ever like? Because that's the issue. Is like a lot of these alt-right guys that have led to like
if someone went to like a all women's boarding school or some shit and killed.
Because I don't think Andrew Tate's ever You can argue he's misogynistic. You can argue that he's sexist, but you can't argue that he hates women. Yeah. It's just not documented.
Okay, so that's kind of the call to violence thing. I want to go to the second half of this, which is I think that even if there isn't a call to violence and even if someone isn't like encouraging people like indirectly to commit violence, I still think it's in the interest of a social democracy to not have shit like racism and sexism be spread in such a wide direction. Okay. Yeah, and I'm okay with using censorship as a tool to stop that.
What if it's proven that censorship's less effective than talking about it?
That's fine. Then I would say we should do that instead.
So then you'd be against censorship if it was proven that it was ineffective.
I would support whatever tools necessary to stop those things. And I would imagine in some cases censorship and in some cases
you'd support any tools.
Yeah, I would be surprised if censorship was never useful in that.
Never useful, sure. Yeah. But it's been predominantly the main tool being used and has proven ineffective. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I do disagree with that.
So you don't think that like this extremism goes unchecked on other platforms, and while the groups might be minor and like might be small, the extremism grows.
Let's think about this logically, Rowan, okay?
Sure.
If you're someone who says something so controversial, whether it's racist or homophobic or whatever, that you get banned from Twitter and go to Rumble, I don't think Rumble made you that way. I think that you're probably already a racist, and you just
but that has nothing to do with it. We're talking about trying to remove the issue.
So it's not like censorship has made it worse. It did nothing.
Censorship in that case, right? Absolutely made it worse. It might not have made the individual who's been pushing this hate worse, but it's definitely made the people around him worse.
How?
Like the people that watch him.
Who is censorship radicalizing?
It's radicalizing their base.
How?
Because they get to go to Rumble, the base will follow them, and they will watch Rumble streams without any opportunity for Andrew Tate to argue against Hasan, without any opportunity for Andrew Tate to argue against Piers Morgan. Well, Piers Morgan argues, but he's very he's not pro-censorship at all. But he gets to go to these platforms and not fight against anyone, not have any level of like private institutions saying you can't say things like this.
I think this is one of the greatest misconceptions of the era, and that people say this about Trump supporters all the time, is that they don't say it, but they're basically like, these people are dumb, and they're super impressionable, and they're going to buy into whatever they see. If you're someone who watches a racist content contributor who gets banned, you follow them to Rumble, you watch their shit, and you watch it like a fucking idiot, and you just believe everything they say, and you get more radicalized, then I just don't think that's a common type of person. I don't think people are that bad at critical
I disagree.
thinking.
I think most people
totally
are.
Disagree
I think most people are. I think most people aren't. Like, most people are. I just said that like 4 times. Dude, you can look at like every sector of the internet, and all of these people will be following along to whatever the person they're watching and are interested in the most is saying. Like, that is just happening. People aren't critically thinking. Like, people don't look around to try to find, like, what the truth is. Like, people will read headlines that fit their narrative, not even because if they read farther down and realized that it was wrong, that, like, they feel wrong about that, but because you're in a social circle. Like, you're with, like, your liberals, you're with your conservatives, and you know what the liberal conservative take is, so you have to continue pushing that take, otherwise you're going to get ostracized. Your group will be like, what the fuck, you're racist? Or they'll be like, what the fuck, like, you're gay or something? They will kick you out of your group. It is like, most people will.
I think that exists large scale, but I think when we're talking about, like, people who are extremely racist and fascist, I think those people are very far and few between, you know.
Fascist, maybe.
Do people,
racist, I don't.
Do people consume content in an uncritical way? Yes. Are people going to adopt? What I was saying is, are people going to adopt racism and extremism in as easy a way?
Yes,
I don't think so.
I do think they will.
I really don't think so.
I think that this is good. I think that
because it's too controversial for people to be sold on it that easily.
Racism is not controversial.
Yeah, it is.
People are racist depending on whatever, like we see racism against white people now. It is very uncontroversial to be racist against white people. It was uncontroversial to be racist against black people.
That's
50
not real
years
racism,
ago.
man.
True.
Nah,
but I'm just saying,
I gotta
like,
balance this because
this is very clear. Like you can see, like, racism, sexism, like, all of these isms are fine as long as whatever time you're in and whatever people you're being racist or sexist against is. You know, like, whatever the, like, oppressor is, you can be hateful against them. You can be racist against them. You can be whatever you want against them. So I just disagree. People can become racist easily, and racist people are just as likely to be radicalized as people who you might characterize as less racist. I think we're all humans, and just, like, the content we've taken in will decide, like, how we feel about certain things.
Do you think that that these exchanges between Hasan, Piker, and Andrew Tate, or between random people who disagree on Twitter, are really changing people's minds?
I can't argue broadly, but I can say anecdotally, like, I just, like, watching, like, the debate with Andrew Tate and Hasan, like, it was about who's better at driving, women or men, because Andrew Tate's very famous for saying women can't drive, they're worse than men at driving, and Hasan brought in evidence proving that, like, women get in less car crashes. Men's insurance starts off higher because historically men are more dangerous drivers. Like, that was, like, those were very real arguments that I learned watching that debate.
But you're not an Andrew Tate fan. You don't think women are worse drivers.
But yeah, okay, but that's not the...
You go in agreeing with Hasan. Did Tate move you? No, that's what I'm saying.
Well...
Let me give you this.
No,
okay?
I don't know. Okay,
you're a huge Destiny fan, right?
Sure, yeah.
Let's say there's two paths you could go down, and you tell me which one would lead you to being less in agreement with Destiny's content. First path, you watch a debate he has with someone. Mm-hmm. Second path, you don't watch him for a month.
And what would lead me to disagree with him more?
Yeah, well, at the end of which one of those would you be, like, more critical thinking, a little further away from his viewpoint?
I think the question's being framed for me to choose the second option, but I don't think me just not watching him would make me more critical. I think it would just be me not watching him for a month. I think that makes me more critical of, like, whatever he's saying.
I don't think debates are as effective at changing people's minds as doing real critical thinking by yourself is.
What? Yeah, that might be true.
Which is why I think censorship is valuable.
Off the backs of a debate, off the backs of a conversation, you can incorporate that into your critical thinking, and that can, like, help you decide. Like, that's literally what the point of a debate is.
How many times do you seen Destiny lose a debate?
It depends optically, and also it's just not like it's just tough to ask because I like.
This is what I'm saying.
No, but okay, the difference is with Andrew Tate
would say the exact same thing. He's never lost a debate.
People would say the same thing about him,
yeah.
But yeah, as a fan of Destiny, there's a track record of him engaging and, like, doing research, trying to come to correct conclusions.
But this is what Tate fans will say.
But Andrew Tate doesn't engage in research. No. It is not the
same
thing because Andrew Tate does not engage in research. He does not actively seek out, like, a different opinions.
I agree with you, but his fans don't think that.
His fans, you don't need to wonder if his fans don't think that. You just need to point it out and see if they can acknowledge it on their own.
And can they? Do you think they can?
I do think they can.
Then why is he still so fucking popular?
He's not anywhere close to as much as he was. He was getting billions of clicks earlier.
Yeah. And what's the reason for that? Is it because he did debates?
It's not
or is it because he got banned from a bunch of platforms?
Not
that is exactly why.
It's because he's engaged in a sexual trafficking trial. He's not able to leave Romania. That is why he's not as popular.
He has less ability to spread his content now, and so he is less
in a
cool.
fucking trial.
That's all it is.
Because he's in a trial about sexual trafficking.
Right,
He
so
isn't able to
what
leave
about Aiden
Romania.
Ross? What about Aiden Ross? What about the people in his orbit? Are they as popular as they were? No. Do they have as many vehicles to spread their
Aiden
information?
Ross is on Kick now instead of Twitch. He has just as many concurrent viewers as he did before, if not more, because he's doing more things. He's inviting new people on. He's inviting Neon on. He's inviting Sneeko on. He's talking to Bradley Martin. It's just not true.
I think when people get banned, their viewership goes down.
Their viewership does go down because there are people on those platforms that were watching them, but their extremist viewers will follow them to those platforms and become more extremist.
I agree with you.
There's
you can't
evidence
stop
of
that. You can't stop that with censorship, and you can't stop that with open dialogue.
Absolutely, you can.
Then why doesn't it happen?
If you don't think that can happen, then you don't believe in democracy. You don't believe that people can come together and disagree about things to come to the best conclusions. You just think that humans are just naturally going to follow who their favorite person is. I've disagreed with Destiny on things before, but it just so happens to be, it's not even coincidence. It's just like, if you are going to do research, talk to people who disagree with you, think about why you might be wrong, you're going to more likely come to correct conclusions. It's just how it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
good.
Yeah, so that was our censorship debate. This is so weird.
Yeah. Comment down below who
won. Who won, who
with.
lost. We're going to look at all your comments and just say Rowan won or Miles won. And whoever has more wins is the victor. And the loser will get pelted with ping pong balls.
Yeah. So if you want to see that, then let us know.